I wanted to wear multiple hats, and I think that's where um, my strength is doing a bunch of these things well. And so wearing these different hats has been really fun. It's been cool to maybe own a product from 0 to 1, like some part of Tusk, and then we push out that feature and then handle that customer interaction as well because whoever's building it has the best idea of like any issues that come up. And so that has been great. Also, go to market stuff.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Harsh Show. This is the fourth episode, and my name is Harshith. This is a show where we talk to founders, operators, VCs, founding engineers, and other people in the startup ecosystem, understanding how they're supporting and building the next unicorn. Today, we have with us Sohan. Hi, Sohan. Welcome to the episode.
Hey, thanks for having me, Harshith.
Absolutely. So, Sohan is working as a founding engineer in a YC24 company, Tusk. So, Sohan, let's start with your journey. You interned at Amazon. You also started your own venture when in school, and now you're at Tusk. So, what was that journey where you were interning in big tech, and then you moved to building your own venture, and now you're helping someone you're helping build a different company? What was that whole journey like for you?
Yeah, I guess I can start off with Amazon. I think I had a great time at Amazon. I undergrad, I didn't go to like the biggest brand name. I went to UC Santa Cruz. And so I always had dreams of working at a big tech internship just to like know I can hang and like belong there. And so once I got it, I was really excited. And yeah, I think it made me realize it wasn't anything crazy and it gave me a lot of confidence. But I think it also made me realize that I think maybe I wanted to do something more 0 to 1. And I think um, my senior year, I started this company called EV Compass with my roommate, and I think that made me realize three things. Like one, I enjoyed building 0 to 1, and then two, I enjoyed working closely with end users, and then also probably I wouldn't get that at big tech, and so that's what kind of led me down that path. And then we met at Columbia, and I think that gave me great experience with AI. And I kind of when I was building EV Compass, I realized that I was getting a little FOMO because I think that's when GPT 3.5 and 4 came out, um, and I barely knew what an LLM was then, and so I thought I needed more education in the space, and then yeah, and then now once I joined that, started getting really into generative AI space, building AI agents, and then that's kind of what led me here at Tusk.
Makes sense. So what was AV Compass all about? What did you guys build there, and how long did you guys build, and when did you guys give up on the idea? What did you guys do with it?
Yeah, so EV Compass. So my college roommate at the time, he was driving an EV, and we were talking about this problem of how if you drive a non-Tesla electric vehicle, there's a dozen different charging stations that you have to manage, and each of those charging stations have their own app in order to charge at their station. And so if you're driving a non-Tesla EV, you're probably shuffling through a dozen different apps. Um, and as you can imagine, that can get pretty annoying. They each have their own payment system, accept different types of payments. And so we had the idea of consolidating all this into one app. Um, so EV drivers don't have to shuffle through different apps. And so we built that out our senior year. And we went through like different EV events, and it was a great time. Ended up getting some users. And then we ended up applying to YC that summer. Interviewed, but then we ended up getting it. And I think around that time was when 3.54 came out, and I started getting more interested in that space. And so I think that's when I started drifting away from that idea. But I think my old co-founder is still working on the idea. But it was definitely a great time. I think I learned a lot more in those like 6 to 9 months than I did in any schooling. So yeah.
No, I 100% agree and believe with whatever you're saying, because building, there is no alternative to building. Whatever entrepreneurship course you take, whatever you do, you're even watching this podcast, sure, that'll help you, but that's not compared to what you would get if you're building it yourself and talking to your customers and understanding what the
Yeah.
problem really is.
Yeah. I think these EV meetups is what kind of made me realize that. I think hearing your end users live and then being able, okay, we got to fix for that and going back and fixing that. I think that feedback loop, that short feedback loop is like really inspiring. And then it helps you like move quickly and build quickly.
I'm curious, when you say EV meetups, is this like AV owners, like people who own cars who are there, or are these like dealers, or like who are these people, and how do you
Yeah.
find these people?
Yeah, I was pretty surprised to find that the EV community is pretty strong. And so there are these Facebook groups where if you have a Rivian, you meet up every Saturday, drive up Mount Diablo,
Oh,
and
interesting.
Rivian owners are just like meeting up, having coffee, talking about EVs. Um, I think the space is really tight and really close, which is really cool to see. Um, yeah,
Pretty cool. I've heard of like the Ferrari clubs, Lamborghini clubs, where they're
yeah,
all driving together and everyone's looking at them and all. I didn't know electric cars had their own club. That's pretty
yeah.
cool.
I guess like to adopt them in the first place, you needed to kind of be, uh, forward looking because I think maybe around 10 years ago, it wasn't that common to own an EV, right? And so these people probably just formed a community, like minded people.
No, 100%. I think 10 years ago, there weren't as many charging stations. You had to charge at your own place and
Yeah,
not as many on the road. So having
yeah,
community, absolutely. That makes a lot of
yeah,
sense.
yeah, yeah.
So someone for people unfamiliar with Tusk, what is Tusk? How do you guys work? And yeah, can you just talk to us about that maybe?
Yeah. So Tusk is an AI powered dev tool that generates unit tests on PRs or MRs. And so once you as an engineer create a PR, every commit after that will look at the code diff and generate unit tests for the changes that you made. Um, and with just the click of a button, engineer can commit any number of these tests into their branch or PR. And so yeah, and we like to think Tusk does two things. One is generate passing tests, which helping with regressions later on, and then the second thing is generating failing tests. So these are bugs that we think your code has, and we provide a test to prove that this is a bug, and then you can go into the IDE and fix that yourself. Um, and so yeah, that's as a gist. That's kind of what Tusk does.
Makes sense. That's pretty interesting. So, a lot of companies are focusing on different parts of the workflow. They will scan your application and then like give you bugs, but you're doing something interesting. You're like looking at the PR, the diff, and then you're directly giving, you're like generating test cases there. So, how does this module actually work? Like, do you just look at that particular file in your PR and like, is this done locally on like, say, your VS Code or your Cursor IDE, or does this go to say GitHub, and then when you're about to merge your PR, that's when it stops you? What is that workflow like?
Yeah, so because we throw a lot of compute at this, and it takes anywhere from like 5 to 15 minutes, we thought async workflow works best for this. And so once you create a PR, that's kind of when you're an engineer, that's kind of when you're at a good stopping point, and you're like, hey, I'm ready for someone to review this, or like I create a draft PR, I'm going to touch this later. And so at that point is when Tusk is triggered, and that's when we look at the code changes at a function level, and gather context on a per function level, and generate unit tests for that. Um, and so you can imagine we gather different types of context about that function, and that takes a decent amount of time. And that's why we thought this async PR workflow makes most sense.
That makes sense. So you've been talking about unit tests, right? So do you guys also do integration tests, and like what other tests are you guys looking at, and like what is that like?
Yeah. So we're starting off with unit testing right now. Integration is on the medium term roadmap. Um, we we think, I don't know if you're familiar with the testing pyramid. It's
Not really.
basically
So
where like pyramids like this, right? And at the bottom should be unit tests. Meaning that there you should bulk of your testing should be unit tests. If you have a strong base in unit testing, then you're gonna less likely have bugs later on in the cycle. And then just integration tests and then our end to end tests. And so we thought unit tests were the most important part of that pyramid, and so that's what we decided to start there. But yeah, integration is the next step on the roadmap.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So, so I think one question I've had is like now, I mean, it's almost like a solved problem. Like a year ago, though, context windows were like a huge bottleneck, right? So we had context like windows of 8,000 tokens. Now we're 200,000 tokens. Now you're like rotating 2 million tokens and so on and so forth. Has that, or like, will that ever be a bottleneck for you guys when you're looking at code? Because I'm assuming that when someone puts out a PR, they will be referring to functions which are not in that particular PR, right? It might be somewhere else in their code base, and say a big, not a big tech, maybe a big company would have a repo that's like 600, 700 MB. So it'd be hard to
Yeah.
crawl all of that. So how do you guys like do that?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because I think any AI coding tool, it's a context problem. Like if you can gather the right context, an LLM is really powerful. But if you can't, then LLM is no good. It's going to give you a bunch of gibberish. Um, and so what we've done is we kind of so we gather context in two sectors. The first is business context. That's like Jira, linear tickets, or PR descriptions, PR titles. And then the second is code based context. And so what we're trying to do with code based context is gather as no more, no less than what we need to generate like really high quality unit tests. And so the way we do that is we programmatically get the stack trace of a symbol. So let's say you're testing function B and function A calls function B calls function C. We can programmatically get that entire stack trace, and then get all the usages of that function, get existing test files, get mocks, etc. And once we gather all that information for that one symbol is what we use as a context. So we're not just throwing files into an LLM and saying, hey, catch bugs, write tests. It's a little bit more structured, and that we found that gives LM enough context to write really high quality unit tests.
No, I think it's very interesting when you talk about just not looking at just the code base, but also integrating with these other tools like Linear or like whatever those are, right?
Yeah,
So how did you guys even come up with that idea? Because if I was like thinking about solving testing as a problem, I would say I'll look at the code base. But now that you talk about adding more context and making more like adding more business knowledge to it, it makes a lot
yeah,
of sense. But what was that thought process like for you guys? Did you talk to customers to figure it out, or was this like a light bulb moment, or what was it for you guys?
yeah. I think early customers were great in providing feedback. I think one thing we realized, if one of our main goals is to find bugs and sort of be code review approved. So instead of saying, "Hey, here's a bug. We think this is a bug. Here's like a test to prove that this is a bug." Um, but in order to find these unique edge cases, you need to have some level of like business context. What is this function trying to do? Um, what is the goal of this PR? And so usages of a function can give you that, but it can only give you so much. And so if you can fully understand what the goal of this PR is, you can infer some business context, um, and then write better edge cases. And so um, linear and Jira tickets are basically that, is basically describing what this PR is trying to do from a business context perspective, and then PR descriptions as well. I think this is one area also we're actively looking into areas we can just improve gathering business context. But yeah, I think that's kind of why we started looking into that, is just because we needed understand more about what this function is doing to write really great edge cases.
No, I 100% agree. Especially when you're like in a startup or like high velocity company, you're not writing the most descriptive PR, the comments, right? You're just like you're pushing out code, and somewhere you say that okay, this code is because this is the functionality that XYZ customer wanted, or this was on our roadmap. So I think that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it wasn't as intuitive to me because I think this is my first time working. I interned at like bigger tech companies where they required larger PR descriptions, but that was a while back. And so yeah, I think it's interesting to see like some of our customers write really detailed PR descriptions of linear tickets.
Right. That makes sense. That makes sense. So, so one thing I was reading about when I was reading about Tusk is the whole idea of LSPs or language server protocols, right? So, what are these things, and like how are you guys integrating with it? Because I was reading that Cursor, Windsurf, all of these somehow uses protocol. So, what is this protocol all about?
Yeah, so So language server protocol is basically this communication protocol between the IDE and the language server. And it basically allows like something like VS Code to communicate with the language server. And that's what gives you autocomplete or like go to definition or find references. That's what it gives you in the IDE, like command B, go to definition. Um, and so this is what we use. We've implemented this in our sandbox environment to be able to programmatically get this stack trace. And so when I talk about getting definitions and references, this is not like
Manual.
or LLM doing this. This is like programmatic, and that's something we've actively wanted to do. Is even though we're an AI workflow, we want to reduce the uh, non-determinism. Um, and so this is one way we found to do that. We can gather all the context we need deterministically, and so every single time you're getting consistent context.
That makes sense. So when you say an IDE talking to the language server, what is the language server? Is that your code base, or is this like some library? What is this one?
Yeah, so these are open source repos that basically the community maintains, and they implement these sort of functions like go to definition, find references.
Oh,
And
okay,
so
okay.
we're implementing this into basically starting a language server requires some work. Sometimes you need install packages, dependencies. So that's like the part we're figuring out, and then we're interacting with these open source repos to provide this language server proxy kind of.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So when you're just talking about a sandbox environment, right? And what is the sandbox environment, and like where is this hosted, and how does this connect to, say, GitHub or anywhere else where like people are having their PRs and whatnot?
Yeah. So, taking a step back, when Tusk generates tests, we run them, we iterate on them, and so uh, to get the best high quality output, and so in order to run them, we need to run them in some sort of environment. And so what we do is we create these ephemeral sandboxes. Um, so every time a PR is created, we create this sandbox, and this is where we run tests. We run this language server. Um, and yeah, and so we have two forms of this. One, we have our own ephemeral sandbox that we spin up for these for some customers, but also some customers use GitHub Actions to use as a sandbox kind of. And so uh, that's been great because they've been able to self serve themselves and set up these sandboxes themselves. Because if we set up these ephemeral sandboxes ourselves, it takes us some time. But some of our smaller customers, they can set up themselves and get it running in within a couple like 10 to 15 minutes.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So on another big chunk of like IDEs, coding agents, is the whole issue of privacy around code, right? So as you
Mhm.
go and like work with bigger companies, you've got your you've got some sort of passwords they have, or maybe they want their code to be secure and sensitive. So have you encountered such customers, and how are you dealing with those kind of cases?
Yeah, yeah. So we have implemented ways for them to securely give Tusk their secrets if they need to run their tests. Um, and we've implemented some secret managers to handle all that. So at no point is any Tusk employee seeing any of this, and it's securely handled. I think um, some that's definitely concerns for some larger customers, and yeah, I'm glad we're able to like provide a secure way of them providing that.
100%. I think like that would be one of the biggest challenges to adopting code, right? Like an agent like this, because even with Cursor, some people who still have qualms about it are still talking about how their files are somehow being hashed and indexed somewhere on the cloud and not on-prem itself. So that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, yeah,
Uh, so Sohan, with O3, with GPT-5 and Llama 5 and like Gemini 3, I don't know, whatever it's called. Um, how do you think you guys can like still stand out and like be an independent company, like as that's something that people do not rely on these agents like generally do?
yeah. That's a great question. I think a lot of our customers right now they use Cursor while they're developing, and then we're a form of a check after that. I think when something's running in CI, you want it to be reliable, consistent, and accurate. And I think these models, these agents, they're highly variable, and so a deterministic AI workflow is kind of what you want in CI, as opposed to an agentic workflow that may or may not give the same output every time. Um, and so I think that's around unit testing. There's a lot that can be done to create an entire workflow centered around that, and sort of differentiates us from just these models or agents. Um, and I think again, like as I mentioned before, it's a data problem, and so um, we've specific to unit testing, we've implemented ways to gather data on unit testing, and so and we can do things that sort of don't scale in other that agents can't necessarily do, like running a bunch of tests in parallel or front loading a lot of this unit testing specific knowledge, like test file regex or where mock's located. And so things like
Hmm.
that give us the edge over these tools because we're just able to generate higher quality tests.
No, absolutely. I think that makes a lot of sense. So moving on to like another side of things, right? So Tusk was started by your brother Sohail and another guy. So uh, how does that work? Joining your brother's startup, what are the dynamics like over there?
Yeah, that's great. That's actually a question I get a lot, and I never know to answer it because it's never anything something I really think about. Um, I think like taking a step back when I guess I can start when they asked if I wanted to join. I was so it was between my 2 years at Columbia, and I was interning. I interned at at a biotech company doing ML there. And then around that time was when Tusk was starting to hire. And that was when Soho reached out to me and Marcel, the CEO, reached out to me asking if I wanted to join. Um, and I thought about it for a little bit then. And then I think after thinking about it for a little bit, I realized there kind of wasn't a better fit in terms of I wanted to be in the AI space. I wanted to work on cutting edge stuff. I want to work with really smart people. Um, and then I get to see my brother every day, which is like really cool and exciting. Um, but yeah, I think it's been like a seamless fit. It's been like 7, 8 months so far, and like we're only 2 years apart, and so we grew up really close. And I think we both really respect each other, and so we have no issues in disagreeing with each other, and none of us take it personally. Our entire team. And so it's kind of like the dynamic between it's my brother, his co-founder Marcel, and then we have another founding engineer, Jinu, and it kind of feels like friends working together building something. And so there's no like hierarchy or anything. And I think that makes it really fun. It's funny. I wrote a LinkedIn post about this like a couple weeks ago, just describing this dynamic because I thought it'd be interesting for people to hear.
Okay,
But
100%. I'm going to link that in the comments because that's
yeah,
something I'm personally thinking about as well. So that's
yeah,
really interesting.
yeah. I think our parents are definitely happy for sure.
100%, 100%.
But I think I'm sure everyone says too that you want to surround yourself with people you want to be, um, and I definitely feel that way with Soho, Marcel, and Janu, and so it's just been a great experience so far.
That makes sense, 100%. So, Sohan, have you ever built with your brother Sohail before? Or was this like the first time you're working together, like in a setting where you're like building, like pushing out code, or what has that been like for you guys?
Yeah, we actually in over COVID we were both home, and we are kind of bored, and the Super Bowl was coming up, and we're missing our friends, and so we wanted to create a betting group, like a questionnaire for the Super Bowl, and then share it with our friends and compete with them. Um, and we looked online. There's no easy way to do it. The only way was to create a Google form and send that out. And so we thought, why don't we just create a really easy way of creating betting groups, and sharing with your friends and sort of creating a leaderboard for that. Um, and so that was our first time working together and building something. Um, I think that was a great experience. He obviously had more experience at that time than I did. That was, I think, my freshman sophomore year of college. I learned a lot working with him then, and I think it was just really fun doing that. We actually tried to turn that into a company, but it ended up working out. Turns out people only care about betting when it's the Super Bowl comes around with your friends, and so
Makes sense.
they
Makes
don't
sense. Or
necessarily
they just want to compete in a
they,
bigger pool where they can make more money. I think.
they don't want to compete. The only time they care about community is the Super Bowl, and so we like to joke we have product market fit once a year during the Super Bowl.
Right,
uh,
that makes sense.
they don't care about doing it for The Bachelor or things like that.
Right, for sure. So, so on today, what kind of customers does Tusk have, and is there like a certain niche that loves using Tusk, or do you guys have customers all over the board?
Yeah, I think really any team that cares about unit testing is a great fit for Tusk. We do have customers across the board, so like early stage startups that are starting to gain traction and they understand the importance of testing. Um, and then like mid stage companies, and then also large publicly traded companies that obviously care about testing. Um, I think when you're really early on, you probably don't want to invest too much time into testing just because you don't know what product is going to stick. You're probably in pivot hell trying to figure something out, and so that might not be the best time to use Tusk. But I think that's one of the what's been like the most interesting thing seeing is the variety of customers that we had. I think we're thinking about making some sort of post about this to like highlight that just to see what unit testing looks like at the different stages.
No, that sounds that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So, how do you guys find your first customers? And like, I saw on your website there's a testimonial from people from deeplearning.ai and things like that. So,
Yeah.
how did companies as big as deeplearning.ai find you guys in the first place? Was it like product hunt or whatever, or did you guys reach out to them? Was it cold emailing? How does that work?
Yeah. Deep learning, I'm trying to remember. They were definitely one of our earliest customers. They actually they had a strong unit testing culture, the strong testing culture in general. And so it was a great fit from the start. They definitely helped work through some of the kinks early on of Tusk. But yeah, I think um, they might have reached out or we might have reached out. I forget what it was for deep learning. But it turns out people care about unit testing a lot. And so the ones that care, they find Tusk really like interesting and then want to give it a shot. Um, and then when onboarding these customers, we usually do it in like a 1 month POC, where we like 1 month proof of concept, where the first week we customize the workflow with custom instructions to like best fit their coding guidelines, and then 2 to 3 weeks of engineers trying out the tool, seeing what works for them, and then in that process we get feedback and we build anything out that better fits their workflow, and then the week 4 like you know, kind of closing it. And so we found that like 1 month POC works best. And um, yeah, that's kind of the blueprint we use for most customers.
No, 100%. I think that makes sense. Especially when you're a startup, no one wants to like give you 100K or like a 7 digit check right away. They want to make
Yeah,
sure that it works on their end, like you're delivering what you promised, and then they're happy to sign the
yeah,
check.
yeah. I think the biggest question people have is they wonder. I think any AI coding tool, they always wonder if it's going to work in their code base. Like you can have these nice, cool demos, but the real question is it going to work in my really large code base? Um, and so that this 1 month POC kind of gives them the space to realize that it does, and so then they can have confidence moving forward.
100%. That makes sense.
Yeah.
So as a founding engineer, I understand you need to wear multiple hats, right? You're not just doing AI, you're just not doing full stack. You probably are contributing towards sales, GDM, finance, people, everything. So what is that like for you? I'm sure it's very different from your internship at Amazon, where you were just like looking at one file, like in a terabyte large code base, and you're juggling so many different functions. So what
Yeah.
has that journey and experience been like for you so far?
Yeah. Um, it's been great. I think this is kind of what I wanted. I wanted to wear multiple hats, and I think that's where my strength is doing a bunch of these things well. And so wearing these different hats has been really fun. It's been cool to maybe own a product from 0 to 1, like some part of Tusk, and then we push out that feature and then handle that customer interaction as well, because whoever's building it has the best idea of like any issues that come up, and so that has been great. Also, go to market stuff. Any ideas any of us have, we're all very receptive to it and willing to try out new things. Um, and so I think that's trying a little bit new things on LinkedIn, and so that was fun to do. Um, and it kind of makes your job like interesting. You never know, like things are changing by the day, and so you never know what's going to be asked, what you're going to need to do for. And so it's been fun. It's been fun just like handling all of this. It's definitely the context switching is something you kind of need to get used to, because it's easy to code when you're just in a mindset and just like coding for hours and hours, right? But then we need a context switch because some customer issue came up, and you need to get into context with that and get back into context of what you're working on. I think that was like the biggest learning curve, but it's been fun. It's been great.
Makes sense. So, Sohan, you were talking about, so when you're finding customers, right? So you're in SF. That's like the hub for like programmers or startups or things like that.
Yeah.
So do you guys attend like AI events, AI meetups as Tusk, and you talk to your customers, find potential customers? What has that journey been like for you guys?
Yeah, we do that. I think, like you said, AI is like, or SF is a huge hub for AI. Um, we found also that through LinkedIn, we've been able to reach a lot of um, potential customers that could be interested in using Tusk. Um, but yeah, our founding engineer gave a talk. I don't know if you heard of AI engineer. Um,
Oh yeah,
it's
the
this, yeah,
conference, the fair,
yeah,
whatever.
yeah. Our founding engineer gave a talk there, and that was pretty cool. And so yeah, these like meetups have been great just to meet potential customers, especially early on, getting that like initial feedback.
Makes sense. So, I want to move towards compliance. So, a lot of times when you're onboarding customers, we were talking about secrets and things like that, right? So, what does compliance mean to a startup in the first place? Like, number two is like, how do you get a compliance? Like, how do you figure out what compliance matters to you? Is it that the customers come and tell you that, hey, we can only work with you if you have, say, a SOC 2 compliance or whatever? How does that journey work like? And what is that?
Yeah, yeah. Um, that's a good question. I think we always we obviously know we protect customer data, but it's nice to have a certificate to say that we do that. Um, I think selling anyone that's not a small startup these days cares about that, and so early on we knew it was important to get SOC 2 compliance. Um, I think beyond that, there's a lot of certifications you can get as a startup. But I don't think it necessarily makes sense to do from the get go. It makes sense if a customer is asking for it, you can easily do it, right? Um, but until someone's asking for it, I don't think there's a reason to get these different types of uh, certificates. But SOC 2, I think, is pretty standard these days, and almost everyone's gonna is looking for it. And so I think that's why it was a priority early on to get that.
That makes sense. So, what are the next milestones for Tusk? What are the personal milestones for you as Sohan, or as founding engineer? What do you think?
Yeah. Um, for Tusk, I think we have a couple exciting things that we're looking forward to. We actually just released this new feature called CoverBot. Um, and what CoverBot does is it looks at every week, every month, every day, however you want to set it. Let's scan your code base, look at areas that have low coverage, and then create a PR, right, unit test for those, and then catch bugs in the process as well. And so we're really excited about that. And then we're excited to get into the space of maintaining tests. So I think there's like a few things we're really excited, we're looking forward to, and it's just about keep growing, keep closing these larger companies, and and yeah, I think um, we're we really I think as a startup, you really want to build something that if you take it away from your customers, they're going to be really upset. They're like, oh wow, I really want this tool back, because it's you don't want, okay, that's cool, but you want, this is great, I want this in my workflow. And so
Right, it's not like good to have, but it's something they should really have, sort of thing.
and as of late, we've been feeling that. We've been feeling our customers feel that way, and so we just keep working towards that. Um, and then yeah, for me, I think I haven't really had time to like think about. I've just been like working, building, building away. But I guess um, I think you only have one shot at career, right? And so you want to make it as dynamic as possible, and that means never being stagnated in your career. And so just keep learning, keep building. I think I've definitely felt that way in the first 7 months. I've learned so much than I have in any 7 month period of my life. And so um, I know as Tusk grows, there's going to be even more responsibilities, and I'm really excited for that. Um, yeah, I think I'm the youngest person here at Tusk, and so I'm excited for the day when I'm not the youngest person. I get to mentor someone else. I think that'd be pretty exciting. I think it'll be a big step for me professionally and personally. But yeah, those are all things I'm looking forward to.
Absolutely. So, as we close off the episode, Sohan, do you have any tips you want to give to someone who is in big tech or someone who is considering joining a startup as a founding engineer? Any things that they should be aware of, or any things that they should be looking forward to?
Yeah, I think um, I think just do. I think you should. Everyone should do what they find interesting and what they love doing, whether that is big tech or like working in startups. There's no point in like trying to be something or someone that you're not. And so, however, whatever makes you happy, I think do. I think if you're working in the startup space, just know that your role is not going to be defined, especially this early on. You're going to be asked to do things that maybe you're not best at. You just need to figure out. But eventually, you maybe get really good at it. And then uh, I think big tech is also great. You get experience that maybe you don't necessarily get at a startup. So things like working at scale, like our scale is nothing near. I know you work in Meta, nothing near what Meta scale, right? And so you're dealing with problems way different than we are dealing with. And so um, I think they both offer like great things, and you can learn so much through both of those options. But yeah, just like do what you find is interesting, and uh, everything else will fall into place. But also, I'm early on in my career. I'm in no place to give like advice, but I'm still figuring it out myself. But yeah, that's kind of what I've realized.
100%. Thank you so much, Sohan. I think a lot of people who are joining as founding engineers are also pretty young. People are starting companies pretty young. So it's great to hear from someone who's just finished school and who's back in the company as a founding engineer. It's really helpful.
Yeah, yeah. This has been great. I think I enjoyed this conversation. This was made me think about things I haven't thought about myself or had time to think about. So I appreciate it.
100%. Thank you, Sohan. And thank you, everyone, for watching this episode. If you liked it, please do subscribe and stay tuned for more.